Hello and welcome. You've tuned into a very special conversation because with me today I have Mr. Sanjeev Mehta, the Executive Chairman at L Catterton India and the former MD and Chair of Hindustan Unilever. But today he's joining us as the author of his very recently published book. So it's good to have you with me in this conversation. Let's start by talking
Delighted, Snehi,
Thank you
to be
so much.
with you
The pleasure is
here today.
entirely mine. Let's start by talking about this theme that's very central to your book and is itself a word on your cover page, and that's humbition. Talk to us about where this term comes from,
Sure.
what made you coin this term, and more importantly, in present day and age, when there's so much pressure around numbers, there's pressure on young business leaders. Has there ever been a case where if someone comes between a trade-off that they have to choose one over the other, what should one do when they find themselves in a fix?
Okay, wonderful. So there are a couple of questions that you have weaved in one. So let's start with first humbition.
Yes.
I come from a school of thought, Snehi, that every person, whatever they do, they need to have a fire of ambition. And this fire should never get extinguished. And you should think big, dream big. I always say that if your plans and thoughts are not audacious, if they don't give you the jitters, they don't make you a bit uncomfortable, then they are not big enough. Yeah? But what happens is that when you become very successful, if you don't have humility, then arrogance seeps in. And who better than Greeks to teach us about hubris? So I always say, have the ambition of fire, have the fire of ambition, but temper it with the cooling waters of humility. And when you have humility, then as a leader or as in a successful person in a very fast changing world, you will never hesitate to say, I don't know. You will never hesitate to say, I need to learn. You will never hesitate to say, I failed. And if you stop learning, you get fossilized. You won't be able to develop yourself. So having humility with the fire of ambition makes it a very potent combination. And that's the reason I coined this word humbition.
Humbition.
Yeah. Now your second question was that very often as individuals, as leaders, we are at a crossroad. And life is about trade-offs. How do you do that? I think there are a few principles, overarching principles. First is always harder right than the easier wrong. That one should be very crystal clear about. The second is you should be very clear about what your true north is. What's your clear purpose in life? That helps you take a decision. Yeah. And once you have taken a decision based on your true purpose in life and following the principle of harder right than the easier wrong, then more likely than not, you will not regret your decision.
Okay, so that's very well put, and humbition as a theme has really reflected throughout your writing in the book.
That's right.
The other central theme in your book is your entire journey that you've chalked out, and you have led in various parts of the world under the Unilever umbrella. You've seen a lot of crises, COVID being one of them. Help us understand, as a leader, other than what business schools can teach you or teaching on the job, what is the one thing that you can really learn or take as a lesson from a real crisis that the world could throw at you? It could be geopolitical, it could be in terms of demand. But what is the one lesson that can only be taught by a crisis?
Snehi, in Chinese language, the word crisis is made of two characters.
Okay.
The first character says danger, and the second character says opportunity. So whenever there is a crisis, your attitude should be, I'll hunt for opportunities. Yeah. And what I always tell our people, that you have to follow the principle of brutal optimism.
Brutal optimism.
Never ever hide the reality from your people. Don't sugarcoat things. But as a leader, you should be in a position to show them the light at the end of the tunnel. So, in a very Churchillian paradox, blood, toil, sweat and tear, but ultimately we shall prevail.
Wow, that's very well put. Let's also talk about a theme that I really liked in your book. It's also one of your chapters. It's called Winning in Many Indias.
That's right.
And you have said that India is many Indias. Now, if you have to gauge in terms of a global company trying to make its footprint in India, trying to make a meaningful mark in India, what should the strategy be? And in your view, what is something that global companies are still getting wrong about the Indian consumer?
That's right. You know, the first most important bit is there is nothing like a global consumer. A consumer is local.
Sure.
So many times what the Western companies do, that they when they come to India, they bring the same playbook which has made them successful in their home country to India, and they expect that the same playbook will take them to victory. And that doesn't happen many times. So they get disappointed with it. Now, one of the things we should accept that India is a continent-sized nation.
Very true.
And India is not a homogeneous country. India is very heterogeneous. And Snehi, before coming into India, I used to be the chairman of Unilever North Africa and Middle East.
Right.
And I was looking after 20 countries, from Oman in the east to Morocco in the west and everything in between. I realized that those 20 countries had more in common than the 29 states of India.
Oh.
Yeah. In those countries, it was one predominant religion, Islam.
Okay.
One predominant language, Arabic. There were pockets of French influence.
Sure.
It was predominant Arabic. And one predominant culture, pan-Arabic culture. अब हमारे देश में आओ, if you come to India, भाषा अलग है, culture is different, palate is different, tastes are different, how we define beauty is different.
Sure.
So when you treat India as one monolithic India, then you would be doing disservice to the Indian consumers. At the core of winning in many Indias is what I call the principle of de-averaging.
Okay.
You can't average India. Yeah.
True.
So it brings in complexity. But my take on complexity is that complexity is a bit like cholesterol.
Cholesterol, okay.
You have the good cholesterol and you have the
Bad one.
So the bad complexity, you need to weed it out. But the good complexity, like high density lipoprotein, you need to learn to manage. And if you do that, then the benefits would be disproportionate.
Okay. I also want to understand a little bit of a paradox that most businesses see. That is short-term value versus long-term value-based, profit creation or financial generation. Right. What would make a business successful, or what would be the ratio of navigation between how you tackle the short-term pressure while you're trying to deliver the longer-term principles of the company?
That's a wonderful question, Snehi. And especially if you are running a listed company.
Absolutely.
The pressure gets more accentuated. Yeah. Now the reality of life is there is no long term without short term. Yeah. But you don't run a business for short term. You know, when I used to run Unilever companies or Hindustan Unilever, it's a company which had been in existence for nearly 7-8 decades when I took over. And my perspective was that we want to build a timeless company. It should be in existence 70 years later or more. So many of the seeds that you sow, I was very clear, I'm not going to reap the harvest. It will be my successor or maybe my successor's successor.
True.
Yeah. So your perspective has to be very clear that we are building a timeless company. And you should be very clear that we are at the end of the day custodian during the time we run the business. And when we leave, we'll pass on the baton to our successor.
True.
And our objective should be that we leave the company in a much better shape
place
than when we inherited the company. That should be our objective.
Sure.
The other important thing, Snehi, is something called a compounding model.
Okay.
Yeah, long-term compounding. You don't look at a sharp uplift. Yeah. For instance, one of the key things we were wanting to do is build a business which not only grows the top line, we were margin dilutive to global Unilever, we become margin accretive to global Unilever, but also ensure that our capital productivity remains very high. So we weren't looking at how do we spike the margin in 1 year. Then we would have ended up taking many short-term decisions.
Sure.
Take a disproportionate price hike,
True.
do some stupid things of cutting costs, which would have haunted us later.
Very true.
Yeah. So we had a rhythm on profit improvement. So one focused relentlessly on bringing in savings, but a large part of that savings we deployed in building the brands or creating markets of the future. And every quarter we had a rhythm of profit improvement. So on an average we delivered about 80-90 bips per annum over the 10-year period. But never did a thing like a big spike.
Sure.
And the other important bit is, if I give you an example, just after COVID, the inflation crept up. There was supply chain disruptions and huge commodity inflation. Now, if we had to maintain the margins, one is we could have taken a disproportionate price hike. Now remember, at that point of time, the consumers' earnings had also taken a hit. So taking a disproportionate price hike would have been wrong. The other is, we could have said, let's stop selling the low unit price point packs because they were margin dilutive to the overall portfolio. Then our objective is to meet the needs of every Indian. So by stopping that 1 rupee or 2 rupee price point, I could have boosted my margins, but my main purpose of meeting the needs of every Indian I would not have met.
Sure.
So we took it on a chin. So our margins at one stage had gone up to 25. Then we pulled it back a bit.
True.
Because we are looking at the long-term interest of the company.
So that's longer term value creation versus just
Completely.
short term value.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. But I also want to talk to you in terms of the changing nature of the Indian consumption space. Consumption as we know it is not just seemed to or limited to general trade and kirana stores now.
Yeah.
There's so much happening in this space. There's e-commerce, now there's quick commerce, there's so much competition within the space. How do businesses, like you have evolved HUL over the years, how do businesses adapt to these situations building on ground?
That's again a great question, Snehi. And the trade structures are evolving. You're absolutely right. Say if you go back to 2013-14, e-commerce and quick commerce were non-existent. Yeah. And then e-commerce and quick commerce came in, which together would now be constituting anywhere close to about 12% of the total channel sales, but growing at the fastest pace. Now, the world has changed and the era of great moderation is over. Yeah, whether it is geopolitics, whether it is supply chain disruptions, whether it is consumer behavior changes, or whether it is trade channels. I think the most important thing an organization needs is you should be adaptable to change and you should be agile.
Okay.
Yeah. When we talk about agile, Snehi, there are three interconnected systems. The first one is the speed with which you're able to identify challenges and opportunities. The second important bit is once you've identified them, what are you going to do about them? So you have to take a decision. And the third very important bit is executing on that decision. That's what makes a company agile. So things will keep changing. Yeah, now you're talking about channel change.
Yeah.
Look at the impact of AI on the businesses. It's going to be very profound. And if you are adaptable, then you would still be able to take any yorker or any swing ball that comes your way and adapt yourself to the changing circumstances. Yeah. So there was a time when we used to say build to last. Now I would say build to adapt.
Build to adapt. It's very interesting, Mr. Mehta, that you've thrown in a cricket analogy because my next question is on cricket for you. I know you've wanted to be a cricketer when you were younger, and there was a certain point where you realized that maybe the talent required was somewhere not there. Now, traditionally, we've been hearing this quote. It's been used to motivate people for ages now that hard work takes over when talent doesn't work hard. In your journey so far, has there ever been a case where you felt that there could be some shortcoming, but then it's hard work that just takes over talent at some point?
You know, everyone has certain gifted talent. If you look at Suryavanshi, guy is gifted.
Absolutely.
Look at his bat speed. It's phenomenal.
It is.
At 15 years of age, the way he hits sixes is absolutely amazing.
It is.
So he's got God's gift, a sheer talent. Yeah. Now, not everyone will have talent of that kind. Now you can bridge a gap through hard work.
Okay.
But if you want to excel in life, I was very clear that whatever I do,
you want to excel.
I want to excel.
Okay.
And when I was in school, I was in a school which in those days was the best school for cricket in Bombay.
Mr. Vijay Merchant is from your school.
That's right. Yeah. Now so it has a great legacy. Now if you don't get a chance to play for the senior team, you realize, hey Sanjeev, you gotta better do something else.
Fair enough.
Yeah, but my passion for the game still remains.
Absolutely.
I still watch cricket, I enjoy cricket.
Are you enjoying the IPL right now?
Oh yes.
Absolutely love it.
Absolutely. And some of the matches have gone to the wire and it's been wonderful. Many teams are shining, though my favorite Mumbai Indians have yet to pick up speed.
I agree with you on that one.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But so that was one question, blast from the past. My other one is around GST, and I think you know what I'm talking about.
That's right.
When you realized around 2017 that
That's
you
right.
had a gain coming in on the GST front, about 118 crores to be precise, is what's mentioned in the book. You decided to return it. Back then, talk to us about what was the internal dialogue within the company, any friction, any resistance, and in present age, if a company wants to do this, how realistic is it?
You know, I believe that Unilever is a purpose-led and values-driven organization. And one of the things why I spent a greater part of my career with Unilever is because I believe that my personal values are in sync with the organizational values. And very early in life, you imbibe the values from your parents.
True.
Yeah. So in our case, from my dad and mom, the principles of integrity, hard work, love for the nation, and very importantly, the belief that success should not be measured in terms of money, but by the impact you have on others. Yeah, so those are the values which are kind of hard-coded in. And things like values or integrity should be practiced even when no one is watching you. Yeah. So I still remember the conversation we were having in the boardroom of HUL when a team came to present. And we were going through the impact on the business. And they first showed the numbers. And when they first showed the numbers, it came out that we were making a gain of about 57 crores, which when did the true up, it became nearly 120 crores. And we were getting a gain. Now that was not the intent of the law. As the law was then framed, there was nothing illegal about it, we retaining it. We could have run it and we would still have been abiding with the law. But you know, as a company, it's not just about following the letter of law.
It's the spirit of the law.
It's the spirit of law. So within a couple of days, we made a check for 57 crores. I went down to Delhi, met the chairperson of Central Board of Excise and Customs and handed her the check. She took a look at the check and dropped it on the table. She said, Mr. Mehta, there's no provision in law to accept this check. So then I explained to her why we believe as a company we should not retain it because it's unearned income and we should pay it back to you. It took the government 6 months to frame rules to accept the payment. And but just think of the message that all the people in the room that day. So when it didn't take me long to take the decision to return.
Okay.
And in the room itself, I proposed to the team that we should return it to the government. There was a bit of pin drop silence. It's not a small amount.
Absolutely.
And then all the people in the room were groomed on Unilever principles. Everyone agreed. But just think of the impact it would have had on the rank and file of the company. This message would have gone down. The people in the room would have gone and spoken about it. Not only people would have felt proud, but they would then carry that same ethos, the same principles in their lives.
Absolutely.
So one of the reasons, Snehi, of me writing the book was to talk about humbition, to talk about compassionate capitalism, and also tell the people that you can practice in India the highest standards of ethics and still create immense amount of value.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You know, many times entrepreneurs meet me and they ask a question that if we stop hustling, we will lose speed in the business. So I have to tell them that when you build right systems and processes, they don't slow you down. In fact, they help you remain agile. Similarly, if you practice the highest standard of ethics, it doesn't stop you from creating value. It facilitates value creation.
Absolutely. And Mr. Mehta, lastly, we've spoken about AI. You did mention AI. I just want to tie it up with something I read in your book. And you very nicely written a sentence that if you look after your people, people will look after the business.
That's one of my core philosophies.
It really hit me. I read that sentence, and your immediate thought is that in a day and age where people are losing their jobs to AI, and you have debates in India about what the working hours, the working culture should be like, where does worker welfare fare in the list of priorities of a leader, and where should it ideally be?
Yeah, this is something which, as a philosophy, I first spoke about when we were navigating Arab Spring in North Africa and Middle East, which was a crisis of huge proportions. Yeah, many countries in the region were up in flames. And one again practiced it when we were battling the COVID crisis. And that time I told my people that our responsibility is not just to, we were one of the first companies to earmark 100 crores for the nation. Then we said that our responsibility is not just to our own people, it is to their families, to the people who are in our ecosystem and their families. Could be distributors, could be the people, could be the suppliers, the people, and very importantly, as a large company, our responsibility goes beyond our ecosystem to the nation. There was a period when the country was, many parts of the country were starved of oxygen. And I remember that evening, as a FICCI presidium, we had a McKinsey consultant come and paint us a picture of how things could get worse on oxygen. Immediately after the call, I called up Alan Jope, who's the global CEO of Unilever, and said, Alan, we need oxygen concentrators. He said, how many? I said, as many you can lay your hands on. I explained to him the situation. He said, leave it to me, I'll get on the job immediately. By the time I got up in the morning, I saw my email. There were mails all over the world with a brief to collect as many concentrators as possible. We got 2 full plane loads of concentrators to India. About 500 we kept for our own use, spread it out across the country for us and our partners, and 5,500 concentrators. We deployed it in 10 cities. In what we called as Project Hope, where O stood for O2, oxygen. Anyone could, and we partnered with Portia, and we had a toll-free number, anyone could call that number and say we need oxygen. Our people would go, teach them how to use, keep it with them. Once they finish use, people would go, collect it, clean it, redeploy it. We provided concentrators to thousands of people. You can't be a successful business in an unsuccessful society. Yeah. And at the end of the day, whether it's a great brand, it's an efficient supply chain, it's great technology, it's brought in and implemented by people.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the onus is on us to look after them. And if during crisis, my brief to the team during the COVID crisis was, don't let money come in the way of looking after our people. And people reciprocate and they walk on water for you. So that's always been my overarching principle. Look after your people, people will look after your business. And I have never been disappointed.
That's a great takeaway from your journey so far. And it's no wonder that HUL as a brand is, there's an HUL product in 1 out of every 8 households in India. That speaks volumes about the kind of penetration, distribution, and more than financials, the kind of trust that people have on HUL as a brand.
Absolutely.
To satisfy daily needs, home, personal care, beauty, food, nutrition, tea, coffee, everything.
And coming back to GST, I still remember after a few weeks, we had gone to meet Mr. Jaitley, who was then the finance minister, on some other matter. And Mr. Jaitley raised the issue and he said, Sanjeev, I can't think of many other companies which would have done what HUL did. That's how you build goodwill, and that is how you build the reputation.
Absolutely. It's been a great conversation, Mr. Mehta. Thank you so much for your time.
No, pleasure, Sneha.
Congratulations on the book and the journey
so
from Union Carbide to Unilever to HUL to FICCI to L Catterton. Everything that's come in the middle. It's been phenomenal reading about your journey and having the chance to see it so up close. Thank you so much for your time today.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
And wish you the best.
Thank you so much.